Welcome back, everyone, to Breakthroughs with Bre. On this podcast, we are having breakthroughs about all things spiritual and personal development in pursuit of our most authentic, free, and joyous lives. My name is Bre. I'm an Akashic Records Channeler, energy healer, psychic, and spiritual and personal development coach. More to say on that later. Today's breakthroughs will be about discernment, fear when working with spirit, mediumship, and tarot. It's going to be such a good episode. And remember, there are timestamps in the episode description, so you can click to whichever segment you feel most drawn towards. And let's get into it. On today's episode, I am so freaking excited. We have Bella, otherwise known as Psychic Waters, on mostly TikTok, but also Instagram. Bella is a gifted psychic. She's a gifted medium and card reader and mediumship development coach. Her and I met through a really cool program that we're doing together, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But I'm so excited to have her on this episode specifically. So, Bella, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Bre. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. I know we're going to have just so much fun because we always have fun. And when we talk about these things.
We do.
Okay, so to start off with, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe about some of those questions or topics I asked all of my podcast hosts or co-hosts so that we can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Let's start with my human design. So I am a 4/6 emotional projector.
Love that.
So you and me share the 4/6.
Does the emotional projector mean you're an emotional authority? Is that what that means?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm an emotional authority too. So we also share that part, but I'm a manifesting generator and you're a projector. So the energy type is the thing that we're different on, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
My big three is I am an Aquarius sun, Aquarius moon, and a Scorpio rising.
We love. One of the funny things, when Bella and I first talked about her astrology with being a full moon baby that she is, not full moon, a new moon baby that she is with in the Aquarius season. She shares sort of similar stuff as my husband. First of all, I love a Scorpio, like Scorpio placements, Scorpio Virgos, like we get on, and then plus the fact that I have the other two water signs in my big three, like it's just like a thing. Um, so my husband's a Scorpio sun and he's an Aquarius rising and Aquarius moon. So he's the double Aquarius with the Scorpio, and I just love it. I think it's the raddest vibe. So it just made total sense to me that in this program that Bella and I are doing together, like I just vibed with her right away. That like even when we connected like one-to-one, that we really got on, and we just got a giggle about the fact that apparently I just can't get enough of my like Aquarius. Wow, that would be a good one. My Aquarius and Scorpio friends. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we really connect emotionally in the same way with wanting to like deeply understand ourselves
Mhm.
and just being very curious about our emotions and what they're showing us.
100%. 100%. I feel like for my astrology, I have a lot of third house, ninth house stuff. So my sun and my Mercury is both in Virgo. And Virgo analyzes, it's like asking a lot of questions, especially in that house of Gemini. It's like trying to gather as much information as possible. And with my Pisces moon, it's really about going into like the subconscious aspects of things, like what are the like deeper meanings. So I feel like to exactly like you said, that like helps me kind of have that similar energy that like a Scorpio just gets in one because that archetype is um so much about diving into the depths, like diving into the deep waters. So I
Cricket
completely
water.
agree. Yeah. So that's been really fun. My other question is, do you know what your Hogwarts house would be?
Honestly, I think it might have changed.
Okay,
Um,
what were you and what are you?
okay, I was Gryffindor,
Okay.
but now I think I would have to take it again and see.
Okay, what would you guess now that you think you would be?
I think I might be a Hufflepuff.
Well, I love that because I am a Hufflepuff,
Yeah.
100%. Me and my husband are Hufflepuffs as a matter of fact. And I really love this for us because I've like learned a lot like more about Hufflepuff just being in like the Harry Potter world because I'm a big fan. And about it being the house that's really the most open and equitable and like compassionate and like, like non-discriminating kind of ultimately, which feels very in line with how I try to look at the world. So I'm a proud Hufflepuff. So if you do end up being a Hufflepuff, you are welcome. You are welcome, as is everybody.
Hufflepuff community.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that your story is fascinating about like how you came into this and like how you talk about the work that you do now. So I want to give you some time to like tell us like like how did this happen to where you're doing this work? Like just give us like your story about this.
Things started off for me very much in the psychic world. So growing up, I always had these visions, and I'm not sure that I've even told you about this, but
So excited to hear.
it would be kind of like a daydream where that's what I would see. I would see these things in my head and like I was there. And then I would be surprised when later on the things that I was seeing before would come true and I would be in the experience. So I would have these visions all my life from as young as I could remember. But it wasn't until my teens that I really wanted to explore how I could have these visions without like I wanted to explore how I could have these visions under my control in a sense.
Mhm.
I was wondering why I was able to have them. I was also wondering what it meant that I was having them. Was there something that I could tap into that I just wasn't aware of? So I wanted to go deeper. And that's when I picked up tarot as a tool for connecting with this psychic side of myself more. What prompted me to pick up tarot was honestly just a really bad breakup. And I wanted that connection and that advice. And I wanted to honestly connect to something that was bigger than myself so that I could understand why what was happening was happening. So when I started connecting with the cards, and pouring my energy there, I was using them to try and understand what had happened. And I was also using them for predictive purposes. So I would ask them questions like, how is this going to go? Or what's going to happen from this? Or what should I do? And everything that came out ended up being what ended up happening. So I thought, this is my link between feeling more in control with how I'm using the psychic energy. So eventually, I thought it was really cool. And I started doing more readings for myself and more readings for others. And that's when I started my TikTok account, Psychic Waters, to just connect with other people who were interested in psychic abilities and were interested in the same kind of things as me, but to also give them readings and go deeper into this thing. How I started was by doing so many free readings. And then eventually it was just like a $1 type of thing. And no matter what reading I gave, and it's funny because the clients that found me when I was doing those $3 readings are the same clients that are with me today. But I was just seeing the same thing, that whatever the cards were saying to me or whatever I was feeling was coming true for these people as well. So I was getting that external validation that there is something more here and there's something real here that can be tested, but also trusted. Eventually, I had been becoming more comfortable giving readings and getting into the reader space, but I wanted to go deeper. I had decided that what going deeper looked like for me was connecting to the people that were giving me the information. So for me, that was spirit guides, past loved ones. As I learned more about, psychic abilities, I also learned more about mediumship. And actually, one person who I'm very grateful that I learned from is also on TikTok. And her name is Megan Elisa Medium. I'm really happy that she's out there promoting mediumship in the way that she does, because it took away a lot of my fear when I first started doing it. And I already had fear coming into it. So I can't imagine what would have happened if I had learned from a fear-based perspective. I don't think I would be here. But I decided she was offering a course with Medium Michael Mayo, and I decided to take their course and see if mediumship would be able to help me deepen my connection with spirit so that I could be able to give deeper, more evidential readings to people. And what I had ended up finding out through the course and the experience of getting closer to spirit was that mediumship was it. Mediumship gave me more purpose than anything else did in my life because it showed me the reason why I was here. And it gave me a deeper meaning towards being alive and everything that I was doing. And this was all I had wanted. Okay, how do you politely say, like, this is me asking you, how do you politely say, like, psychic readings don't fulfill me because I think that the questions you're asking are ego-based?
I think you just say it exactly like that. In my perspective, a lot of people use psychic readings to ask ego-based questions, and that is in alignment to me. I think that's exactly how you said it is how you say it.
Okay, let me repeat that.
Honestly, I'll probably just leave all of this in the episode for
Leave
everybody
it.
who wants to know. How do you ask the thing you want to ask? It's probably by just asking the thing you want to ask.
Period.
Lean
Leave it
into your
in.
truth, baby, you know?
Um, and I feel like shame coming up when I say that because I don't want you to think that your questions are not valid or you shouldn't be curious about the things that you're asking. But in order to really help you feel better with what you're seeking, because what everyone is seeking at the end of the day is to feel better, is to feel their own love, you know, is to feel like they have some sort of purpose or like just things are okay. And mediumship is what gave me that. It wasn't the psychic information. It wasn't being connected. It was seeing that this is real and there's more to you being here. So mediumship opened the door for my self-development, honestly, because when I was only doing psychic readings, there was no reason for me to look into my fears, you know, look into my triggers, look into the things that were holding me back. When you're psychic is when you're tapping into current energy with another person and seeing where that's going. But there's nothing about that that is giving you an explanation as to why you're here or why you want to do the work that you do, right? There's a deeper connection that is so beautiful. And the best thing about it, when I found out about it, is that it was true. Like, the love that you're seeking is really there. Like it's real and it's what you were meant to get to this whole time and it can't be taken away from you. And for someone who grew up very isolated and depressed, to know that that wasn't the truth at all was the thing that saved my life. Mediumship really called to me and I just kept developing further and further. I've taken lots of classes with lots of different teachers. I also do in-person circles and I think it's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Oh, I'm like in my feels listening to you talk about it because one, it just resonates with how I personally think and feel about all of this spiritual kind of work and just like existence in the first place. But just to talk about how like returning to like the truth of who you are and the love of who you are, which is really what we're all seeking, like that's some wise shit right there. Like that's like profound, like very profound stuff. And I can feel you talking about that, what a relief it was to like find that, you know, to like to be reconnected to that. And yeah, that like mediumship was the thing that called you. It was the thing that proved that like gave you the proof, that gave you the evidence, that gave you the knowing, like in your own body. Yes, this
Mhm.
is it. You know, because for me, that was working with the Akashic Records, right? Like I was doing a lot of card work and stuff, and like I'm just so like sensitive and psychic that like I was picking up on shit like that anyway. But like you said, tapping into something a little bit different than just psychic energy can again help us tap into that why, like that deeper thing. And that can be extremely transformative. That can be extremely activating in a really wonderful way. And I feel like that has the, I feel like that almost is a more, oh, what's the word? Like almost kind of like more effective way to like get you into alignment with that, which is where I feel like the relief comes from, you know? So I just like relate and feel so much about what you shared.
I love that.
What I feel like I want to ask you now, like what do you wish you would have known? Like what do you like about where at now versus like when you look back, you know? Like I know we're always in this evolving journey and like where you're going to be tomorrow, there's going to be a little bit of that, but I'm feeling called to ask you, like how do you feel about where you're at now in comparison to earlier parts of your journey coming into this work?
It's interesting you asked that because that's exactly what we're gonna get into, but the fear is
Mhm.
like the number one thing for me because I was so scared of spirit and of just the things you see in the media, and people don't really have a solid understanding of what it is, but they also think that there can't be like a singular definition or something that is true, that is consistent among everyone who believes in it, if that makes sense. But I don't think that's true. I think for one thing is that there is no fear from, like, there is no spirit that wants to harm you. And if I had known that, then I think I would have opened myself up a lot more to receiving just more help. Like I think I could have made things a lot easier for myself, because even in the moments where I was alone and I thought I didn't have anyone, they were always there. And I think for a lot of people that feel that way, like connecting to your guides or spirit or just people that love you is a really great tool that you can always use. So that's one thing I wish that I did know.
Mhm. And the synchronicities of you saying that, I was just reading a book that literally said, like, let yourself connect to divine love because you're always surrounded by divine love that literally wants to pour into you, like
Mhm,
always. So, like, let yourself be divine love and let yourself receive it because it's literally constantly trying to pour into you. And I feel like that connects with what you said in terms of like letting yourself not be afraid of
mm,
receiving the feeling and the love and that vibration from the beings and spirit that's like literally all around us.
mhm. And one thing that I feel like that fear really stems from, at least for me, it was the feeling of like not being worthy enough of having that, or not feeling deserving of it, which has nothing to do with them. So it's not like I have to go out and attract this thing in and allow myself to feel better. It was a feeling of, even though I feel sad right now, I can feel a little bit better, or I can allow myself to feel sad. And that's when the love comes in, is when you allow things to happen.
Mm,
So I think even the feeling of knowing that spirit exists and is very real and is wanting to help you makes you feel more soft with yourself, because if you feel that no matter what you feel like, you still at the end of the day deserve that grace, that's your own self-love. That's you accepting it, and that's you feeling deserving of it, and that's when it's allowed to come in for you.
100%. 100%.
I don't think that we heal alone, and I don't
Mm,
think that we have to heal alone. And us being brought together, I think, has been such a huge part, even with in terms of timing when things have happened for both of us,
mhm.
has been just so divinely orchestrated.
Totally.
My growth has been letting myself feel more joy,
Mm,
because I do tend to have these very perfectionistic tendencies where I want to control everything because I want to feel safe, and again, that comes from fear, like we've been learning, everything comes down to fear. Um, but I've just been really allowing myself to receive and really allowing myself to, like, feel the support that I have. You know, you being one of those people that has made that very easy for me.
mm. Oh, I love that. And yes, I think that's so true. Like, yeah, we don't have to heal alone and we really shouldn't. Like our bodies are built to be able to co-regulate with people, like even on a physiological level, and like we're hardwired emotionally and spiritually for connection, you know? So,
Yes. And you don't need to be anywhere that you're not. It's just about, what is the next thing that feels doable and right for me? You know, and if it's nothing because you don't know what that thing is, then you need to be okay with doing nothing. Like that is just as much of an act of self-love as you doing the thing.
Ah, there was I just like, that was like, there's so much potency in that. You don't need to be anywhere you're not. You just need to know the next thing. And how can you have peace and like acceptance and surrender to if the next thing is pause for a minute,
Mhm.
be alone for a minute, reflect, be in silence, rest. Like be okay with that is in the same way that you are okay and excited about like an exciting step or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's be okay with yourself because there's no way that you're showing up that's wrong. Maybe it's frustrating you because you don't understand why you're doing it, but you can understand. You just need to
mhm.
have the intention that I want to, you know?
Mm, so good. So good.
And can I say something else about while we're talking about not healing alone?
Mhm.
I think it's so important to like, one thing that was so mind-blowing for me to realize and to connect with is that even in mediumship readings or when I'm connecting with spirit and when other people are connecting with spirit, no one ever shows up alone. So
Mm,
they will always have people in spirit that are coming with them to support them. And there are people that come to help facilitate the process, like to bring in energy so that the whole thing can work, but also for support. Like no one goes anywhere alone. And I think that's so beautiful.
I remember you telling me that, and I was like, that is so cool. That's so beautiful that even in like your experience on the other side, it's still that you're always plugged in with people and there's an abundance of people who are always wanting to help you.
Yes, out of no reason, then they love you.
Oh, okay. For our channeled message today, we're letting it flow. I just feel like we're going to start where we're going to start. We're going to move where we're going to move, and there's going to be lots of good stuff. Um, I will say one of the areas that the Akashic Keepers told me when I was channeling into this was to talk about the concept of discernment. I feel like that's going to be a good place to start. Not only so you can use that concept as you listen to the rest of what we talk about, but I feel like that's going to be a good foundation for us moving forward. So if it
Mhm.
works for you, Bella, I'm going to share a couple of my thoughts about this, and then I would love for you, of course, to like add in all the things that comes up for you too.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. One of the things that has been showing itself to me and really moving me is this concept of coming into deeper clarity with like what your own soul frequency, your own resonance, your own truth is, and what that feels like in your body, what it feels like to know what works for you and what doesn't. There's no need to make this like super complicated. It actually can be something really simple, like even when you think about like stuff that you enjoy and you're like, yes, that's my kind of thing versus things that you just like it's not your thing, like I don't get it, I'm not interested in it. Like in your body when you think about two different things like that, like what's the difference in how it feels?
Yeah.
That is an example of resonance and discernment. Because you know the feeling of your own self and what things feel like when they're really supporting your truth, when they align to the truth of who you are, you're able to say, yep, that's for me, or nope, that's just not for me. And we're not using the words good or bad because we're not applying that kind of judgment. There's no need to like qualify anything like that. It's just a matter of that it doesn't resonate with me, right? So, and another way you could think about this too is like for me, I get it when people like talk about their philosophies about something because really there's a lot of like energetic coding that's underneath that. There's a lot of belief and emotion, like when people are talking about like their mindsets about something, right? I can listen to somebody talk about something, and when I resonate, it literally like lights me up. It's like a Christmas tree turning on. I'm like, oh yes, like yeah, 100%, like I'm excited. Like that is a signal to me in my body that something is resonating with me, right? Or I remember the first time I ever heard anything about astrology and that my midheaven is in Pisces. And so there's this like, you know, um, that there's this legacy of being a spiritual emotional healer and that it like was like somebody rang a gong in me. I like, I was like, whoa, like resonance, right? Versus other times when I hear people talk about things and I'm just like, like it's even like a cringe away from it. I'm like, that makes me feel icky, that makes me feel upset or sad or something, not even in a triggered way, just like I can feel like the vibration of like how I'm feeling change. And I almost get this sensation of wanting to lean away from it or turn away from it because it just doesn't vibe with me. And that does not mean what they're saying is wrong. It doesn't mean what they're saying is necessarily untrue as much as it's not true for me, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't resonate for me. That is a signal. That is me discerning that that thing's not for me.
Mhm.
What I'm getting is that we have a trouble sometimes discerning things, and I'm getting for two reasons. One, because we have been taught that we have to judge everything as good or bad, and
Mhm.
there's a part of us that doesn't want to judge things as good or bad. Like we feel bad about it, but we also like have been taught that we have to, and that's a survival thing, right? Like whenever we feel like we have to say something is good or bad, that is in like our 3D, animal brain trying to figure out what's survivable and not survivable because good is a synonym for survivable, bad is a synonym from survivable, right? So like that's where that's coming from. As we're doing this spiritual growth journey, we're coming out of that perspective. We don't need to think about things in terms of survivability or not. Like we can, and we don't need to like categorize things in that polarity. So that is one reason why we block ourselves from letting ourselves really acknowledge the truth of how we feel about things and if things vibe with us or not, is because we're afraid that that means that we're saying that something is bad. It's not. It's just not for you. It's just not
Mhm.
for you. Simple as that. The other thing that makes it difficult is because we don't claim ourselves, like we don't know ourselves, right? We're like blocking ourselves from really deeply connecting with like the truth of who we are because it does take a certain amount of familiarity and and um I guess confidence to
Mhm.
claim like what's right for us and what's not right for us,
Mhm.
so when you don't know, or when you're questioning, when you are in doubt about who you really are and what really works for you, it can also make it hard to discern when something's a big yes and when something's a no. you know
Mhm.
um I'm getting another element of that is that there's just so many of us who don't realize how much we're relying on external validation to let us believe that something is true or right for us. And that is built on a lot of codependency stuff that's just in our culture. It's a lot of generational handed down from parents. Like, I need you to need me to sign off on something before you do something. Like, that's like the coding underneath a lot of shit we get from our parents. And that's because that's what they got from their parents. And there's a lot of self-worth stuff tied in that. Could be its own episode, right? But the the
Mhm.
underlying thing there is that we don't realize how much we look externally to like somebody to co-sign something that is true for us,
Mhm.
right? We can't like let ourselves say, nope, that's what I want until three people tell us, yep, I think that's what you are and what you should want. Right. There's a certain element of like being aware of that and starting to build that muscle of, wait a minute, before I go ask anybody else, like, what do I think? How do I feel, the good, bad, and the ugly, right? I can meet that with compassion. I don't have to shame that, but like, what do I really feel about a certain situation? Strengthening that muscle strengthens your connection to your own truth and your own love because they're really hand in hand, and can allow you to more quickly discern what is true for you and what's not. And for you also not to feel threatened when you come across something that does not resonate with you. Because I think that's probably the last thing that I'll leave this concept of discernment with, is that when we are built on belief patterns of codependency and validation, no wonder we get upset when we come across something that doesn't resonate with us because it feels like it literally threatens our sense of truth. Because if somebody else is telling it to us, all of a sudden that means we have to question our truth because again, we've like built everything to like stand on the
Mhm.
stilts of something externally, right? Like I get that would make sense that we get freaked out about that. We don't have to be. It could literally just be like letting it roll off your back, or like not even get close enough to you where it touches your back, where it just like simply like it bounces away. Like you're not even in the same vibration of it. So it can't reach you unless it's rising up to your vibration, right? Like that's the only way it could reach you. Another thing I say is like you're not even playing in that sandbox, like you're in a whole nother sandbox. Like you're not available to it, right? That's the kind of energy that helps us stay in the vibration of the truth of who we are, and
Mhm.
also helps us to navigate things that are new with openness, with curiosity, and with this sort of humble, like, I'm here to learn, because we're not afraid that we're going to come across information
Mm,
that is threatening to us, because nothing can be threatening to us like when we're in our own vibration. Like nothing can be threatening to us when we're in our own truth, right?
mhm,
We can come across things again that like we know don't vibe, and we're like, great, that's for somebody else, that's not for me, you know? Or we come across things that do vibe and they alchemize and change and activate energies in us and they resonate, and it's this beautiful lighting up of us or expansion, right? Or we might come across people or things where like we know that it doesn't match. Maybe there's an invitation for them to like meet or like match your vibration for something. And if they're just not able to or not willing to at that time, great. That means they're meant for something else. And it doesn't, again, like you don't have availability for anything that's not your truth. That's not your resonance. That's not like your vibe. You know, like
mm.
there's no space for that. That also comes into like a little bit of a boundaries thing, which again is going to be another episode. So I, it felt important to talk about this to tee up this conversation around being fearful of spirit.
Yeah.
Because again, I think a lot of people, if even if we talk about getting like psychic readings or something, or like getting tarot readings or something, like what the fear implies is that like you believe that what somebody tells you is more of the truth than what you believe or what you know in yourself, and that's never true. It's
Mhm,
never true. I don't care if you're talking to the person that you trust the most in the world. If they hand you something, which is really just vibrational frequency, whatever it is that they hand you, right? And you know in your core that that just doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't make what they said bad. It doesn't make their intention bad. It just that's your signal that it's not right, it's not true. And I
mhm,
feel like this fear that somebody's going to tell you something that's like earth shattering or something, and that ultimately what that signals to me is not true, like
mhm,
the fear that you think they're going to tell you that, and that somehow is going to like blow up your world or something. Like of course it can't. If you are holding your own truth, if you are discerning from your own place of truth and knowing yourself, like it would never shake that, because you're never going to prioritize what somebody else tells you about yourself over what you know about your own self.
mhm, mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like let me see, was there anything else that you wanted to say about? No, they're just saying hold your vibration of truth, and all the
Mhm,
things that are true will find you. And
mhm,
anything that's not in alignment, like vibrationally with your highest love and truth, isn't going to find you, which is all these bad things you're scared of. Like they can't find you when you're in your truth and love bubble. They just can't, you know? Um, yeah. So I'm gonna pause there. Bella, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh. Let me sit for a second. Even as you were speaking, you were, like, getting into it, and, like, the energy was changing, and you were, like, claiming it for yourself, like, there was something there.
Mm,
Um, I think the concept of truth is the reason why I even got into this work, and I think it's, like, the single most important thing because, like you said, if you were blonde and there was someone who every single day tried to tell you that your hair was black, like, it would be annoying, but it would not matter to you because that's just not true to you. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like when you open your eyes to something and you just understand and you can see something for what it is, that's it. Like you're there. Okay. So the beautiful thing about truth is that it will be there in ways that also make logical sense to you, and it will not have to disrupt your logical thinking patterns. So what I mean by that is, especially in terms of spirit, if something does also not make logical sense to you and it feels wrong, like you don't also have the proof for it, you know, what spirit says is be discerning. You know, if
mhm.
something is causing you fear, look deeper into what that is instead of just accepting it as truth, because the truth is going to feel right on all levels, including the logical. And if you're scared of something, what spirit says is go and test it. You know, ask more questions.
Yeah. I feel like what I'm like picking up even just from the energy behind what you're saying is that when something is offered to you through the form of a psychic message, a mediumship reading, even if it doesn't come from one of those sources, that's going to have a feeling in your body that's going to cascade into all of the elements of your experience that allows you to relax into the knowing that it's true, or it's going to provide you with the opportunities to validate that that's a thing. I will say sometimes the knowings challenge my ego mind, which is sometimes where logic can be connected. But usually there's this like deep knowing that there's truth there. And it's
Mhm.
just a matter of like, show me how logically this makes sense, or like, show me the thought patterns
Mhm.
that like connect the dots here.
Mhm.
And to your point, when I ask questions, then mentally it makes sense too, right? So like there's an opportunity for those things to feel like that sense of like relief and relaxation that comes with like the truth of knowing something, when it really is true. Sometimes it just takes you like asking more questions. And again, you're going to get the kind of information that you need to discern. There's a piece of that that really resonates that I feel like I'm going to work, even if it challenges me, even if it changes or, comes up against other ways that I'm thinking.
Mhm.
Or again, if it's something that like is so out there that like you just, or like there's not like even when you ask and think into it, there's not really evidence behind it, and something about it just doesn't feel like it's not for you. There was something maybe lost in translation in the most innocent cases, like it just wasn't for you. The things that are going to be for you are going to have those opportunities to feel good, feel aligned, feel resonant on all levels when you allow them to. And I think what you said is interesting. If you have that initial reaction of fear, that's probably more of a signal of something in your own psyche, in your own brain, that in itself is an offering to see and to relate to than it is necessarily about whatever message that you received.
Right. And like the phrase that Ben uses comes to mind, fear is a misguided form of love. It's like fear as something that is like negative and trying to hurt you as in a concept as itself, to me, doesn't exist if it is also a misguided form of love. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
if if it's something trying to protect me in any way, then something innately like fearful cannot exist. Like
Mm.
something that can hurt me outside of myself cannot exist.
Yeah. I love we get so existential about it all. I want to say another thing about the fear stuff because again, Bella and I met in this fear alchemy course, led by the fear guy. That's his name on Instagram, Ben, and he's fantastic. We've learned so much. What I've loved so much about it and what I felt like I needed a new way to relate to fear because it just never felt true to me that fear was an enemy. It
Mhm.
just felt like an energy I just didn't know how to move through. And it felt like I was blaming it for a lot of things. So yes, learning that fear is this misguided attempt for love, that it's this effort to protect you. What I've found is that um it's kind of like an effort to protect you on the basis of things that aren't aligned with like the truth of who you are. Like that's kind of how, as I've gone more into this work, is the case. And it's only when fear comes up that you can follow the route back down to see what belief is not aligned to your truth. Because when you have a belief that's aligned to your truth, and then your body and your mind and all these things like do things to support that, it feels great. Like you feel bliss, you feel joy, you feel flow. It's when we're not in alignment and congruence with the truth of ourselves and love, like that divine love, that things start to feel sticky and heavy and difficult. So, like when things feel difficult, that's a sign that you're not in congruence with your truth somewhere, right? And that's an opportunity to see, okay, does there need to be adjustment? So, in that way, fear is a guide, it's a friend, to an invitation to see where something is not in truth. And I think when we're talking about being afraid of working with spirit or these tools or whatever, that's a signal that we're not connected to the truth of what that really means to work with spirit. Like we're
Mhm.
not really connected to the truth of what that means for us to connect with it.
Mhm.
And one of the things that you said when we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, that had come up in your mediumship training was the guides, the loved ones that you connect with saying, when you connect with us, you're really connecting with you. Like you
Mhm.
don't have anything to fear. Like you're
Mhm.
you're connecting with an extension of you.
Mhm.
Like there is literally nothing to fear from yourself. And
Mhm.
even how I've started to understand it, like even thinking about like different vibrational frequencies, like once you get like above like a 40 frequency, like everything is literally just in love. There is no non-love vibration. There is no non-love option that anything that anybody chooses. So like literally you're just connecting to the essence of your soul, which is love. Like there's nothing to fear from that. So like what is the fear about? Because it's really not about what you're connecting to. It's about your own projections onto that.
And I think the reason why fear can feel like so scary and as this massive thing that is like worst case scenario, right? I think the reason why it feels like that is because what we're scared of is that the truth is not actually true. Like the things that we want, like that we're love and we are always loved and we're never alone and all these nice things. I think the fear comes from us not seeing that that is true yet and feeling like if this isn't true, then what? That is
Mhm.
worst case scenario. No one wants to feel that way.
Yeah.
And the great thing that I discovered was it actually was true. Like imagine you living in a world where you see it as true and believe it.
And you
And
know
when you
it.
yeah, you know it. So no one can take it away from you.
Hmm.
And I think that's what we're both trying to get people to see. Because once you see it, there's no going back. You can keep testing it and I'll keep giving you the same answer and the same results.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, even breaking that down a little bit more, we think about certain fears that might come up with doing this kind of work, right? What I've found in my work with clients is that a lot of the cores are fears about not being good enough,
Mhm.
not being worthy, not being capable. That all results in our ability to be loved and have connection and to like get the things that we desire, right? Because if we're not enough, if we're not capable, if we're not worthy, then we can't get those things that we want. And that's like the thought of that is it causes such deep anguish in us, right?
Mhm.
It's the fear that like we might not be, it's that it like it comes down to a lot of that kind of stuff that results in the sort of rejections and abandonments and all the things that, that we're trying to avoid. So when, or that we're not supported to your point, like you're talking about, or we're not connected, or that we're like alone in the universe or something, which is like a terrifying, terrifying thought. Um, an extension, even like what you're afraid of hearing, like from a psychic or like a tarot reader or something, which I relate to because I did not come up in the spiritual world at all. And I was raised in a community that like literally demonized all this kind of stuff, was like that they're going to tell you that like you're doing it wrong or that like you're bad or that something bad is going to happen to you, which would kind of be opposed to the thought that like you're constantly being supported and everything is literally trying to work out for you, you
And
know?
that's where the logic comes in as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, like you're worried that you're going to hear some sort of information that confirms your fear,
Mhm.
that confirms this fear. And the reason why there's fear around it is because it's not true, it's not incongruence, and you just haven't adjusted the belief to be in congruence with what it does feel true. Because when you do feel it's true, it literally changes your whole life. Like even when you experience other kinds of fears or resistance, like it's so much easier to move through when you know the truth of it is that you're actually love, you're divine, you're supported,
Mhm.
like everything's trying to work out. Like when you really believe that,
Mhm.
like none of this other stuff is like really going to shake you. It can challenge you, it can expand you, but like it's not, you know, and it's disconnection from that knowing and really the fear that maybe that knowing is like somehow not true or something that is really what we're projecting onto all of these potentially bad experiences working with
Mhm.
spirit. Oh, I'm getting one other really good thing. Oh, thank you so much for that. One of the things in media is that there's like demons or something, right? Or that there's like spirits that would hurt you, or that there are spirits that are somehow bad.
Mhm.
This is my take on this that literally just dropped into my brain right now. Thank you so much, guys. This is a projection that you are afraid that you are somehow bad, or that
Yes.
there's somehow some part of you that is evil, or that
Yes.
there's somehow some part of you that
Mhm.
is malintended, that's like bad at its core.
Mhm.
Our fear that there is a part of us that is like legitimately not good is projected onto spirit by fearing that there is something in the spiritual realm that is those things that we're afraid that we might be.
Yes, exactly what I was gonna say too.
That is not true. It is not true. You are love. You are literally divine light incarnated into a human form. The things that you are afraid of being bad, that you are ashamed of, is human conditioning that has got things distorted. Like when you do legitimate shadow work, which you can do in a one-on-one program with me. Um, when you do legitimate shadow work and you face this shit that you're afraid of, that you think makes me is going to mean you're a bad person or something, like when you meet that with truth and compassion, you see that there is no truth to it. There's no basis to it. It's distorted fear of being abandoned. It's distorted fear of being rejected. It's an interpretation of things that happen to you that are actually what was happening, right? Like there's no basis to those things. There's no basis to it. When you know that within yourself, you can see that there's nothing that is bad in spirit either.
Mhm. I like what you said about the idea of like people feeling like there is something inherently malice about them. And I feel like a lot of that comes from people not recognizing that, like, what feelings are. And I feel like when you grow up feeling the same thing over and over again, eventually you think that this is me. I am this feeling. I am,
Mhm.
someone that is rejected. It's exactly like you said. It's like if you are brave enough to want to see the truth in something, which we can 100% promise you is always good,
Mhm.
then you can see that what happened, no matter what way it made you feel, was never a reflection of you.
Mm.
You are not reflected in what other people do or say. Um,
Mm.
like what other people do or say is a reflection of them.
Mhm.
But if you go back to like all the experiences that you had or specific memories that come up that make you feel like you really took on that feeling and it became you, like one, I feel like I can say there was always another person involved that made you feel that way because you didn't recognize where you start and where the other person, like the distance between you two.
Mhm.
But okay, so something comes up for me. I feel like I want to talk about the feeling of like being able to understand something, like being able to understand that maybe it was never about you, but then still feeling like it is. So I feel like that's
Yeah.
definitely for me.
Yeah, and even what you were talking about before is like when you emotionally feel something, so you're feeling the vibration of it move through your physical body, right? And you experience that so many times that you think that this is the truth, right? Not necessarily the case. That is your real experience.
Mhm.
But when I say true, like capital T true, like the truth of who you are in your soul, which is something that when you get connected with, you're like, oh shit, that's what's true, right? Like when you feel it, when you let yourself tap into that, you're like, oh, all that other stuff was this like temporary like wisp of a wind, and like connecting to like what my like soul is, like that is some powerful constant never ending infinite energy, you know. So if you
Mhm.
haven't started to do that work with yourself, like really I really really highly recommend it. But yes, in this human experience we can get shit distorted because of the consistency of feeling some sort of emotional experience, thinking that that's true. Again, what I really believe is that when something is like really dense and when it's difficult, that is a signal that something is not in congruence with the truth. Because when you're in congruence with the truth, it feels blissful, it feels joyful, it feels expansive, it feels loving. So even the fact that it was difficult in the first place and that it feels icky is literally the signal that like it's not true, but you just haven't figured out how it's not true yet. Do you know what
Mhm.
I mean? Um, so I'm gonna pause there.
Right. It's like if I think that if you can feel the feeling of something, like if it is possible that you can feel like you are rejected, then that means you don't see that you are not even rejectable. Like that's not even something that is possible for you. Because I think like in terms of it being something you're not seeing about yourself yet, right? Like a truth of yourself that you haven't connected with or just understood or seen yet. I think that your fears are really just that.
Again, coming back to this question of like, where are you feeling fear about working with spirit, whether that's through another reader or channeler or yourself? Um, and if we're open-minded to the fact that that does not reflect any truth about spirit, but is in fact showing us something about ourselves, because when we meet spirit, we meet ourselves, right? Which
Mhm,
is a beautiful opportunity. There's that element of it.
mhm,
And I also think that there's an element of like, okay, if we want to start to feel the truth of what connecting with spirit is,
mhm.
and we want to start feeling those really positive and supportive experiences that give our mind the proof to be able to like release old thoughts and embrace new ones. Um, Approach that with curiosity and playfulness. Like, if again, it's kind of like test the theory, like do your own little science experiment, you know, like if you are really open to the fact that maybe like spirit is in fact just love that's waiting to like meet you at your frequency and support you where you're at, like ask your guides and teams like, well, what are little ways that I can start to expand my experience with this in a way that feels really loving and supportive, right? Like ask them to help bring you those experiences, to help bring you the proof and the signs that like really what is always trying to pour into your cup is love. Like
Mhm.
let that show itself to you, right? Like let yourself feel that in the same way that you're feeling this like visceral fear. Like give yourself like a context point, like something that you can hold on to that's also just as visceral, but you also kind of have to be like open to like little by little letting spirit show you that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think if you feel genuinely ready to ask the question, you're ready to have the answer already. So it's
Ooh,
also just a fact of seeing, like, if I ask that question, what I'm tuned into the frequency of the answer already. So what in my life already feels like I'm being pulled to it? Does that make sense?
mm,
Like if there's a person that when you ask a question of something, you feel like they might know the answer, there's your next step. I feel like when you align with the frequency of the question that you're asking, all you're doing is opening space. And like I've physically seen this also just like in terms of human design. I have a generator friend and I was just like tuning into like the psychic space with her and she asked me a question about something and I could physically see like her energy space open up the second she asked the question.
mm,
And with projectors like myself, we're said to have like a penetrating aura. So we wait for there to be space or curiosity so that we can fill the space and be valued for our, you know,
contribution.
experience. Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's in the sense of like questions open up space and curiosity opens up space for something to gain or to be filled. And I feel like if you're looking to have something, you need to start with creating the space for it. AK, just it's as simple as just like asking the question.
There's so much goodness there. There's so much juiciness there. And this is something that goes beyond just trying to develop your relationship with spirit to be one that is filled with like love and support, and where you're sort of like detoxifying some of the fear out of it that a lot of people feel. But yes, like you just need an opening. Like to create that opportunity, there has to be space. And like it's literally as simple as, can I like detach from this belief, this thought process, this mindset about it? Can I like release my vice grip on it and step back and get curious for a minute and see if anything else wants to come in and see how that feels compared to how this other thing used to feel, right? Talking about discernment and resonance again, right? Like here was my other belief that told me that it is possible to interact with spirit in a way that does harm to me. Okay, well, let me like step back from that for a second because these brilliant girls are talking about stuff that makes a lot of sense to me, you know? And let me step back for a minute and like ask the question, like, is this true?
Right.
Is there a different kind of experience that I can have, or like what is the truth of this experience? Like, can you show that to me? Not only can you provide me the information that makes me go, ah, that's it, even in my logical brain, but can you also give me the experience so I can feel it and experience it firsthand? And that creates the space for things to come in to get confirmed. You have the experience you're going to have, and then you can go back and say, original thought, new thought, which one feels better in terms of like resonance with my body? Okay, I guess I know the truth now.
Yes, exactly.
Boom. Okay. I do want to talk about like the mediumship and tarot stuff specifically. And I think it's so cool that we're talking about these two modalities on this episode, talking about fear of spirit, because I think these are two of the most feared modalities, if I'm being totally honest, right? Tarot for sure. I think it has this reputation of like, again, like having more power than you do over your life or something. That like somehow like a card's going to be pulled and it's the tower card and your life is going to fall apart because somebody pulled the tower card for you or something. Like that's just not,
It
first of all, it's
doesn't
not how it works. Nothing has more power over your life than you do. These are just tools to help you connect more into the truth and into the support that is quite literally always around you, right? And then the same thing with mediumship, this thought that like there's, that ghosts and all this media stuff that there's like demons or like people that are trying to hurt, or something like that. And so opening up this connection to your loved ones and to spirit somehow might open you up to some sort of like bad experience. Yeah, these are like two of the most, I'd say have the most anxiety around them. So I'm going to open it up to you to like talk a little bit about like how you feel about these two modalities.
I would say whatever you're feeling towards tarot, towards your deck, or towards spirit is how you're feeling towards other people that you like other people in the world. Like if you believe that the tarot deck might have more power over you, what you're really just reflecting through this different experience is that you believe other people outside of the scenario have the ability to have power over you in some sense. Or if you believe that tarot is able to tell you something negative and that it's going to happen, then you believe that your life is not in your own hands.
Somebody just dropped a mother friggin' truth bomb right there.
Or in terms of mediumship, I mean, this is major for me because where was the fear coming from that somebody was going to hurt me? Because I have been hurt by other people here. These fears and spirit is not something outside of yourself. Like you are spirit, right? And it's like as simple as considering it, just connecting with another person who is not maybe physically here.
One of the things that was like hardest for me to reconcile, and I also wasn't creating the space to be able to reconcile it, talking about like asking questions and creating space, was I think that there has to be, in terms of the part where you said about like that somebody can hurt me, right? That there's a belief that like somebody can hurt me. I think there's a lot of people that are going to listen to that and be like, of course somebody could hurt me, like somebody could come physically harm me, or like somebody that I love could do something that would like create emotional pain for me. Like, of course people can hurt me. Um, what I'm going to say is this is when you allow yourself to connect with what I guess you could call some of those like 5D perspectives and energies, which is really love.
Mm,
Um, there's an opportunity for a really, really, really big reframe on those experiences where you would say you were hurt,
mm,
um, to not look at them quite like that.
mhm,
That's been a big part of my journey, is that a lot of my patterns and a lot of my conditioning taught me to avoid pain, that
mm,
pain was somehow this bad thing to be avoided at all cost, and pain wasn't just my own pain, it was also the discomfort of causing anybody else discomfort, right? Like to like deeply avoid this. And through this spiritual work, I've been able to see that my relationship to pain was the problem, not the pain itself.
mm,
My relationship, all of the things that I assigned, the meaning I assigned to experiences that quote unquote hurt me, is what was creating pain, not the experience itself. So
mhm,
if you found yourself being like, well, wait a minute, like things can hurt me, like bad things can happen to me, um, I would offer to you that perhaps that is not the capital T truth. And Perhaps it's your relationship, the definition you're giving things, the meaning that you're assigning to things, the power that you're essentially giving them. That's taking away your own power to be able to navigate these things with a little bit more ease and without so much anguish. That maybe that's where some stuff is being a little sneaky on you.
Mhm.
Okay. I feel like what I also want to talk about for this is how beautiful and wonderful these tools can be in your own spiritual development. Whether you think that you're going to maybe do some sort of job that has to do with channeling or healing, whatever, like even if you don't do that, having tools to be able to connect with guidance, with your guides, your loved ones, whoever it is,
Mhm.
and be able to like extract messages or to confirm messages or to like get injections of insight that don't come simply from your own 3D brain is one of the most valuable tools that you can have in life,
Mhm.
period. I think that there is so much power, specifically in like the traditional tarot deck, because if you're into cards, you'll know that there's a million different kinds of cards. The traditional tarot deck has like the major arcana and then like the four suits and like all that kind of stuff. It's like the same cards that have the same fundamental meaning, but like every deck, the person who creates the deck might create different artwork for the card or like a slightly different interpretation, but like the archetype of each card is the same through the deck. There's a lot of power and energy in that card because those are archetypes and like symbols and metaphors that exist in like the super conscious of the collective, right? And because they've existed in there for a long time, and I think that they were channeled through in their original origin, it gives so much opportunity and juiciness for really impactful and meaningful messages to come through, right? Like just like the what is available for spirit to be able to like bring to you through the power of that deck is really fucking cool. It's so cool. There's so much power that comes through just for the sake of the symbols that you're working with and like the inherent energy that is in those. There are other kinds of decks which are wonderful too. If you feel connected to other decks that have different kinds of cards and different kinds of messages that come up through them, that's great too. Because really all that the decks are for me, how I experience them, is the opportunity for like a message or something to come up that sparks a thought or knowing in me, right?
Mhm.
Like it's a way for me to have a conversation with my guides, which isn't me like even channeling information. I have to get in a certain mindset. I'm like, okay, let me make sure my ego mind is kind of like off to the side and I'm just channeling through. And even sometimes I still get tripped up with like, is this really channeled information or was this like my ego like kind of chiming in a little bit? And when I pull the cards, there's nothing like my ego can't have chimed in because the card just is what the card is. You know what I mean? So it's like a really, really fun way to pull stuff. But I am constantly delighted by cards. Like I giggle so much at cards that come up. I'm like, of course this came up. Of all the cards in this deck, like this is the one that came up. Like this is the meaning of it. Like it is the coolest thing. It can be so, so fun. And I just want to offer that idea that like these things can be delightful, they can be joyful, like they can be such a fun way to sit down and connect with yourself and have that moment where you're just getting real with yourself, or you're really trying to consider like options and possibilities and how you really feel about them. Like they can be really fucking cool.
I don't know what else to add to that. You said it all. They're
And would you say that your experience is specifically like working with the cards is similar to that?
Yes, I like that you said that it's something that you can't necessarily be making up because it's physically right in front of you. So I like the idea that you can play around with the way that you see yourself and other things. So what do I get from this card? What does that mean to me? I think it's kind of training yourself to have this deeper connection with yourself where it's not about the card itself. It's what about the card means to you. So it's just constantly reflecting back to you, how you feel about yourself in that current moment.
Mhm. Yeah, and as an example of that, because I think that's absolutely true, like I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna pull from this card. We're gonna have a live example of this right now, right here and now. So you can start doing this, all of you who are listening. So I'm gonna pull a card just like a what information message do you want from me? And I have a reversed Five of Swords. I'm gonna look and see some of the juiciness for the reversed Five of Swords here. Reversed Five of Swords emphasizes the unfairness of a fight at hand. It can indicate being on the other side of a case of bullying or oppression. Either way, find constructive ways of dealing with your anger or disappointment. If you're caught in the middle of an ego-driven fight that doesn't pertain to you, find a way to move on from the situation.
Mhm.
I could pull this card, and there are a million ways that I could interpret this card. Now, the themes of what it's related to are kind of set, I guess, just because that's like the nature of the cards is that there's a certain subject to them. But I can interpret this in a million different ways. There could be a million different things in my life that this could relate to. This could be an internal struggle. This could be in relationships. This could be a struggle with money. This could be a struggle creating an idea, bringing it to life. Like there's a million different things this card could come to. But the very first things that come up when I read this card are probably the things that this is talking about because it's reflecting back to me where I am in something that I would call like a conflict with something, right? Or as I read about there being struggle or there being some ego thing and like needing to come at it from a different perspective, like reading those words and like reading this card reflects back to me, okay, where do I honestly feel like that's happening? Do you know what
Mhm.
I mean? So to your point, like this isn't really about, I mean, it is about the card, but it's not about the card. Do you know what I mean? And I could pull another one, even if I was like, okay, but like what area of life is this about? I need some more help, right? It's gonna, of course, it's the justice card. It's the justice card. Like, where are there things out of balance? Again, there's another like element of like what feels like it's not fair. Like if I say to myself, like, God, this just isn't fair, right? Like there's an element of that with both of these cards. And I think, okay, where have I been telling that to myself in my life? I'm probably going to see what's going on, right?
Mhm.
So I just think it's just this beautiful conversation with yourself. And I really think that it's led by your guides too, because like there are a million other cards that could have come up that would have pointed me to different things. But like, where is there inequity? Where is there injustice? Where is there not fairness? Where is this conflict? Is where the combination of these cards is going to lead you,
Mhm.
right? Of all of the cards that could come up in the deck. Right. And then what it makes you feel and what it makes you think of and the introspection that it triggers in yourself is the gift of working with these things. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
What do you have to add to that, Bella?
Just by you asking the question and creating space, again, it's giving you an avenue to it's giving you an outlet of finding the answer and something that also feels like you can trust it because again, it's physical. So if you don't have a lot of experience with trusting your own intuition, then this is a great way of working with that and starting to develop that inner trust as well.
Mm, so well said. I feel like the extension of that is something like channeling work, whether you're channeling into loved ones, which is what I might classify as mediumship versus channeling into a million other things. Like, for example, I channel into the Akashic Records. So I'd love for you to spend a minute talking about mediumship specifically. Like what would you define as mediumship? And how would you explain like the experience of tapping into a skill like mediumship versus, tapping into a tool like something like tarot.
Okay. Well, in terms of what mediumship is, I think it's really important to like have mediumship be evidential. So what that means is you want your mediumship, you want the messages that you're receiving to be validated because that is the point of mediumship is to bring the validation and the evidence that someone is not dead. We continue on and this person is still in your current life. And that means nothing, even if we are properly channeling without the evidence that is to be validated by the other person. So I think that is really important and it's not inherent in the definition of mediumship, but I think it should be. Um,
Mm, I love that. The point of mediumship, like the purpose,
yeah.
is to create that knowing, to really tune you into the knowing, but to, I guess you could say, create the knowing that they still exist, that they did not die, their energy, their soul lives on, and that they're connected to you to create that validation. So to have it built into the system
Mhm.
that there is like tangible things,
Mhm.
proof points
Mhm.
that show you that that's real is like that's how you accomplish the whole point of that. I think that's so beautifully said.
Yes. And for someone who, if you have seen mediumship, if you do believe that we can, speak to the dead and people live on, then what does that say about the life that you're currently living? Do you think there's purpose for you here? Do you think that, do you see the value in what we can get from someone who has already died if we can speak to them?
Mm. It opens up this like whole world of questions and possibilities.
Yes, but I think it's so great because the thing that we feel is true and want to be true, which is that we're loved and all that, is once again validated again through this external sort of source that can be tested.
Hmm.
That's really important.
Mm. Gosh, I love that. When do you think it makes sense for somebody to look into getting a mediumship reading? Like, who are the kinds of people that you think get the most out of a mediumship reading, or like are kind of like vibrationally the right match for a reading, or at least the kind of readings that you like to do?
Yeah. I think, you know, just the intention of connecting with spirit and having a reading where you can allow just any sort of love that wants to be there for you to come through is beneficial for everybody. Because what it does is just it reaffirms and it shows you that you are love, you are loved, you are never alone. And these things I feel everyone needs would benefit from genuinely feeling and seeing the evidence of that as well.
Mm,
Obviously, mediumship is more traditionally targeted towards people that are grieving, and it does serve a big purpose in healing and allowing people to move through their grief.
mhm,
But for people that aren't grieving, like for me, for example, I haven't lost anyone that I have like deeply, deeply grieved. Um, but mediumship has been the thing to change my life because I think it's just the purpose of connecting with people and knowing that they're there, you know, in terms of truth and like seeing something that you didn't see before. Well, just to add on to like the other things I've said, these people are here for you to help you in any way. So, they love when you ask them questions, and you can use a reading or a session to ask them about anything that you want. And you will gain something out of it because they know exactly what I think is beautiful is they know the question you're going to ask before you ask it. And the answer is already there before you even ask the question.
mhm,
Um, so it's a matter of you making the decision. You asking the question is you making the decision to say, I choose to have this now in my life. Like I choose this for myself. And ultimately that's what spirit is trying to get you to do. That's what their goal is, for you to come back to yourself, for you to not necessarily be reliant on them, or for you to even listen to them as a voice of authority. They're always just trying to bring you back to yourself and the things that you want and the things that make you feel like you.
mhm.
So to answer your question, a reading like that I think would benefit anyone who's ready to start looking into what makes them feel most like me, and someone who's ready to deeply value that as well.
Yeah, one of the things that like this made me think of that I'd never considered before, is that if there are people who, well, mediumship is a really cool avenue for people who like question if there is something bigger at all.
Mhm.
Like if you are not sure that there are things bigger than us or that there's spirit at all, if like really aren't sure, the fact that somebody who you physically saw and had physical human interactions with can tell, and a person can tell you specific things that happened in your physical reality this incarnation without having any knowing any single thing about you, the feeling that that can create, the opening that that can create to start to believe that there is something bigger than us and there are people and energy around us that's always trying to support us, is like the opening to come back into the knowing that we are source and we are that thing that's bigger than us, you know?
Mhm.
And I had never considered that because for all of the complexities and difficulties of growing up in a very dogmatically religious community, I also like there was never a question that there's a bigger
Mhm.
power. Like I never questioned that. Now, what the bigger power was and its quality and its role in my life, that's a whole nother different story. But the fact that there was a bigger power always felt true to me. So
Mhm.
like I wouldn't have never even considered like maybe mediumship is like one avenue that people can start to actually feel the proof and the evidence that there is something bigger if they're not sure that there is, because
Mhm.
they're getting the confirmation from somebody they had that physical human experience with.
Exactly. It's I love how you said it, and it's something that anyone can do and anyone can develop. But outside of that, anyone could also seek this connection. And the point of having our loved ones come through is because we also place a certain level of trust on them. So, these people trust you, you also trust them. That's how everything in the spirit world works. It runs off this love. So you wouldn't have people here, you wouldn't have loved ones coming through for any other reason than like to it's also beautiful because you see that like you matter. Who you place trust in matters, like your feelings do matter. So they would never bring someone through, especially for like a first time, or you're just getting into this world questioning if it's real. They're going to bring people through for you that are comforting,
Mhm.
which I think is just also like so much extra validation that they are really wanting you to feel comfortable, like you are not here to suffer.
Mhm. I think that's so beautiful. I know for me, where I feel like I'm like leaving this conversation is that we are constantly supported, we're constantly loved, and our interaction with spirit through something like tarot or mediumship or even just like in our own day-to-day life is always trying to reflect back to us how supported and loved that we are. And facing some of these fears and seeing them for what they really are, dissolving them a little bit, may in fact open us up to be able to actually receive this like love and support that's always trying to be poured into us and allow ourselves to actually be more open, like really open to that.
Yes. And I think it's an experience that everyone is looking for.
Mm,
If you are looking to solidify or to further solidify, how you feel about yourself, if you want to feel confident in the love that you have for yourself, why don't you start with seeing if that love is possible and real? Because I think that's important. If you don't think that it's possible, but you do it because you think that if you work hard enough, it's something you can get, you're already missing the mark of thinking that love is something you have to work for. So
yeah.
my like words of advice would be to question and to keep following the things that make you curious and the things that feel like your capital T truth.
Yeah. Capital T, truth. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Breakthroughs with Bre. It felt like there was a lot of energy that moved through. I'm so happy that I was able to have this conversation today with Bella. And honestly, I feel like we'll probably have her back. Bella, please tell people where they can find you, how they can work with you, because I have a feeling that you're going to be on people's minds when they want to connect with spirit, when they want a mediumship reading, when they want to work with the cards. So please tell us where we can find you.
So I'm at Psychic Waters on TikTok, at Psychic Waters 23 on Instagram. You can find my links through my TikTok bio. I offer one-on-one personal readings where you're free to use the time with spirit as you please. I also offer live readings on TikTok so you can see in real time how I work with others. And then I also offer some other fun stuff through my links.
Okay, so go to her TikTok there. I'll also link her stuff in the episode description if for some reason, like maybe you don't have TikTok or something, but you still want to get connected with her. For my stuff, so my services are shifting. I'm still going to be offering some Akashic Records activations and channeling like sporadically, but they're not going to be constantly open on my site anymore. It's really only going to be when there's openings and when they're telling me I need to open up some spots. The main thing now is going to be these programs. I'm really, really feeling called that there are people that need and want this one-on-one intensive work to have some of the realizations and be able to like dive in deep and release some stuff like we talked about today. So if you would be interested in working with me one-on-one, please reach out to me. Let's talk about what that would look like. Let's have a conversation about like what you would even want to accomplish with that time, like what you would see for yourself. And we'll see if one of the programs that I have is something that would fit for that, or if maybe it's something different. In either case, it's really fun to connect with you guys. So at Healing with Bre on Instagram, healingwithbre.net on the web. And yeah, let me know. Uh, of course, you can find me here, Breakthroughs with Bre. I will be putting this podcast on all podcasting networks soon, so you can just listen to the audio and wherever you listen to podcasts. So that's going to be coming up soon. But for now, please keep coming back to join us on YouTube. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful week.